Welcome back to this Institute of Practical Learning series on finding happiness in your life and the different zones or colours of the rainbow which we've used to help you separate out the many different places where you can find happiness and score up or accumulate, as it were, happiness points or tokens so that in your life you can have a degree of happiness. Now, in each of the colour areas you can collect up to 3 points or tokens, and you only need 7 to be moderately happy and 10 to be really happy. Not mad happy, but contented, validated, and feel that there is joy around you in the world. As we undertake this journey, we've reached the zone called the world zone. So far, we've talked about finding happiness within the red self, then the orange pair, then finding happiness within a family environment, which is the yellow, and then next one up is the green one, which is groups. Then we've talked about country, and now we've reached indigo, or the world zone. After this, we will also have another colour called life, the universe, and everything. Sometimes people call that ultraviolet or whatever. Anyway, let's focus right now on the world zone. So our aspiration with this video is to help you find happiness within a domain of thinking about the world you are living in. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if right now you think, well, good luck with that. It's a pretty dreadful situation around me or going on in the world. You've got wars and genocide and all sorts of crazy things. And people seem to be taxing and spending your money on things that you just don't agree with. Well, that's an environment, but you can still find happiness. And the way to achieve it is separate out in your mind the natural beauty of the world in one part of the way you think, and then think about separately the culture, the man-made aspect. So it's the natural part of the world and the natural environment around you that is the natural world on planet Earth, and the cultural world around you where you're living at the moment, but also what's going on in the world generally with different societies. Are societies cooperating or are they fighting? Is geopolitics, as it's called, trying to make you hate other countries and other parts of the world, or are they encouraging you to think positive? Now, surprisingly, there's an awful lot of good things going on in that cultural aspect, which you're just not told about. It's what's called the public domain. So later on in this video, we'll be talking about that. In fact, why don't we start with that? Because that's probably the one that's influencing you most at the moment. Now, you may think, how can this guy talk to me about what's really going on in the world? How does he possibly know? And the answer is, since I've been a child, and for the last 70 plus years, I have been privileged to knowing what's going on secretly within governments and politics. I've been told and experienced what's going on beyond the public domain. So I've worked with quite a lot of secret organizations and secret science projects. And overall, I've been impressed that there's a lot of people working very, very hard to make the world a better place. You may say, well, give me some examples. I could give you a few. I'll pick one out, which is weather forecasting. Now, you may say, well, weather forecasting, how useful is that? But if you want to wake up in the morning and know what's going to happen to the weather, it's really helpful to have a good weather forecast. Now, the progress in that area has been enormous, and it's been helped by the other aspect of most of my life, which has been advanced science and computing. Now that's kicked on into all sorts of other things like photography, for example. People being able to take a picture of the Earth or a video of the Earth from a space rocket, or a picture from the moon, or taking a picture of each other on the moon. How was that achieved? And so my background has been understanding that science and understanding how advanced science can be leveraged to help us here on planet Earth have a better life. And that's covered just about every aspect where advanced science and computing is necessary. So it's been about people, it's been about health, it's been about safety, stopping wars actually, and things like that. I've learned to think positive. In 1946, I was a child in Cairo, in Egypt, in case your geography is not that brilliant, and my father was involved in some negotiations for the peaceful transfer of power within Egypt from King Farouk to ceasing being a kingdom and becoming a republic. And that was handled quite discreetly, and the British were working using what's called back channels. So then we moved back to the UK, and my father was in the Ministry of Defence. I think it may even then still have been called the War Office. And then he moved into the Air Ministry. So as a boy of 12, 13, 14, 15, I was privileged to the testing, even going to Farnborough Airport and so on, and seeing the early testing of aeroplanes like fighters and bombers, and knowing what was going on behind the scenes, what was working, what wasn't working, and then what went into the public domain and what people were told. That gave me a real appetite for the aerospace industry, and I did a degree in mechanical engineering, and then I studied in the first wave of people who were looking at computing. So I saw my first 1401 IBM computer when I was about 22 years old, must have been 1960s-ish, and I thought, well, there's the future. Advanced technology is going to have an awful lot to do with engineering and with computing. So I decided to focus on that. I built up my knowledge of aerospace and computing and engineering. And pretty quickly, I was hired by Boeing from America. They came over here on what was called a brain drain trip, hunting for talent. I was lucky enough to be chosen. So I went over to work with Boeing. I thought I was going to work on the space program, but pretty quickly I found myself working on stuff for the Vietnam War. Now, I wasn't a very happy bunny with that. And so during that, I had to work for them for a year. And then I thought, I'm going to have another go at space. So I was interviewed by a group of people, pretty mysterious people, but they were working on a thing called the Manned Orbiting Laboratory, or the MOL. And the idea of that was people could sit up there in space and take pictures of the Earth and generally look at the climate and stuff like that. At least that's what I thought it was going to be. What I subsequently found out was it was a CIA program to try and put laser weapons in space and shoot down Russian satellites, because Russia was way ahead of America at that time. Now, fortunately, that project was cancelled, and it showed the integrity, really, of the way America's run, because they wouldn't let the CIA get away with just doing anything they wanted. They really were concerned about, was this going to benefit mankind? You may think that what happened 50 years ago is utterly irrelevant to your search at the moment to find happiness in the modern world. But if you're going to succeed, you need to understand why people tell you the things they tell you, and why the environment and the infrastructure and everything around you is based on progress that Homo sapiens has made over the years. So the road you walk on, maybe the car you drive, the phone or whatever device you're using, the screen you're looking at, it's all influenced by progress, things that have evolved from the efforts and the cleverness of other people. So if you're going to position where you are now and where you're likely to be in the future, it really is helpful not to spend all your time looking in the rearview mirror, of course not, to also think carefully about where are you now and what do you want and how relevant is everything that has brought you to where you are now is to your future planning and how you progress. We're going to be much more specific in part 2 of this rainbow view of the world as we look at the Indigo section. I'm going to be specific about where the happiness tokens can be found. There's just going to be a little bit more of the positioning and the history to help you realize just where those points are, where those tokens can be gathered, and the power you have over your decisions about where you decide to look within your culture and looking beyond the public domain.